Hello and welcome to Chats, a television podcast, Season 4, The ChatzRoom. My name is Alan, and I'm joined by a man who's not afraid to say that he has Bieber fever. It's Magellan.
Baby. Oh. I hope you keep that silence in there because that's how long it took me to come up with the Justin Bieber song.
Oh yeah, and you picked one that's older than the time the episode takes place.
Which, did he do that Despacito song?
No, he didn't. He's not Louis Fonzi. Oh my!
I thought he was on it or something.
John, you're so old.
What's the one that Justin
grandpa.
Bieber did? Justin Bieber just did one that's like a Despacito kind of thing.
You're so old. Do you want me to give you your walker and like your mashed potatoes later?
Listen, I know who Cardi B is, and that's about as much as I need to be current on.
All right, name me one of her albums.
Well, I don't want to be uncouth.
It's the news. It's the ChatzRoom. You're allowed to be uncouth. I just want to hear you say the words. Say the words.
Gangster Bitch Music, Volumes 1 and 2.
Say it with an A, not an R.
Gangsta. Excuse me. Sorry.
Thank you.
I apologize.
Volumes 1 and 2. Correct. This is the ChatzRoom, folks. How you doing?
Well, I'm okay.
Here on the ChatzRoom, Magellan and I are okay, and we talk about the Newsroom. It's an okay show by Aaron Sorkin. This week we watched Season 1, Episode 5, Amen, and Episode 6, Bullies. First up, we're going to be discussing Amen, which was written, as always, by Aaron Sorkin, directed by Daniel Manayan. It aired July 22nd, 2012, and it takes place between February 10th and the 14th of 2011. What happened in this episode of the Newsroom?
While covering the forced ejection of Egypt's president, the team learns of a protest in Wisconsin that is condemning the governor's plan to balance the budget at the detriment of teachers and other public sector union employees, leading everyone to try to cover both stories simultaneously. Will becomes convinced of a conspiracy by the Koch brothers to rig the system in their favor by fighting for Citizens United and then abolishing the unions. Elliot is assaulted while covering Egypt abroad and is sent home, so Neil asks one of his online friends, codenamed Amen, to be their journalist in Egypt while the internet is still down. Amen has to reveal his identity to be trusted, and Neil worries about how this coverage might endanger his friend. Finally, every man hits something or gets hit this episode. Will almost pays Nina off for writing more slander about him, and instead pays to cover the cost of freeing Khalid, aka Amen, from military jail. Everyone pays Will back to mimic his favorite scene from Rudy. It is saccharine.
That's the episode. John, what did you think of Amen?
What did I think of it? Well, this episode gave me whiplash.
I love J. Jonah Jameson. J.K. Simmons. We can never remember his name. It's J.K. Simmons. He played that role like 12 years ago.
Not everything was 12 years ago.
I mean, vaguely. Name me something that wasn't 12 years ago. Exactly. You can't.
The 2016 Olympics?
Eventually, that'll be 12 years ago.
Yeah, okay.
Why did this episode give you whiplash, Magellan?
Because it's trying to make me care both about Egypt and Valentine's Day.
It's the Newsroom, where they make you care about. They expect you to care about like incredibly important, like shifts in the political spectrum of a country and its ruling class, and also a holiday where people don't get to have sex unless they're dating.
It's just high octane sitcom nonsense this time around, and I was not a huge fan.
These two plots do not gel in the same episode. It makes little sense.
I really liked the Egypt stuff. I thought that was cool. I think both of these episodes, 5 and 6, present genuine ethical conundrums vis-a-vis presenting the news. Yeah. Both of these episodes were actually about news stories, and it wasn't about, like, this is us doing it right. It was about, this is us trying to do it right, but then a problem, an unforeseen issue comes up that we have to think about and worry about. That is what the show should be doing. And then this first episode also just had some icky, boring love triangle stuff thrown in there.
It's not just that. You mentioned the sitcom earlier. It's almost like a physical situational comedy at points, especially at the beginning where we get, and I put this in the summary for a reason, multiple recurring scenes of dudes hitting things like a cartoon. The episode, I believe, begins with Jim and Maggie trying to get some video moved across the office really quickly, and they're both freaking out. And how do we download this? It's 2010, and we don't know how to download video packages quickly. Premiere exports so slowly, which it does. And Jim runs out the door with a USB stick and then runs into a glass door like a Windex commercial. Idiot. Whatever.
Somehow that makes him bleed from the head.
Like he has a gash.
Yeah, which doesn't make any sense.
Realistically, he would just have a bruise, yeah. And then at some point early on in this episode, Neil just like vomits out his backstory to everybody because they're talking about Egypt, and he talks about how, I have this friend who's in Egypt and he's covering all this stuff, and he's like me. His dad was a mechanic because that's the thing everyone needs, a mechanic, and I lived in this place and this long, and it's like this is now at least the second if not third time on the show where side characters, particularly non-white side characters, just like get one scene where they get to talk and be important and like have their backstory.
Tell us everything we need to know about them.
Yeah, and then it's like, all right, anyways, back to the background for you. Bye. Like, Neil is technically important in this episode because he brings everybody Amen, who is key. But, like, I feel like Neil is, again, just used as, like, an information dump. Not for himself and for, like, the politics going on and, like, the culture going on in Egypt. And the internet, especially in the second episode. Oof.
Yeah, right.
And it's all handled, like you said, dreadfully seriously.
Well, I don't want to jump to the end of the episode, but too quickly, I guess. But the whole way that this is tied together is Will's conversation with Nina, the gossip columnist, where essentially he says, lay off my staff. These are the best people. We're real journalists, not like you guys. And then he starts to rattle off like, he just reminds us how bad the whole episode was because he's like, I've got an executive producer who has to subtract on her hands. It's like, okay, I've got one guy who was beaten up in Egypt. That's legit. Then one guy, it's like his hand hurts because he punched his computer. And another guy hit a door. And the other guy hit a door on purpose.
Looking for a boss who wasn't there.
We're doing the real news over here. It's not clear. Some of this stuff, obviously, you should be taking seriously. Like Elliot being in Egypt and getting mugged and injured, that's legit. That we got to take that seriously. But Don jumping at the door and like dislocating his shoulder or something.
Yeah.
Was I supposed to laugh at that? Was I supposed to think that like this is the news the way you're supposed to do it?
You're supposed to throw yourselves at doors.
Yeah.
That is a really good question. Is how serious are we supposed to take all this like ridiculousness? And if we're supposed to take it seriously, then like what purpose does all of that serve? Like what does Jim hitting himself on a glass door, like tell us about how good the news group is? It doesn't tell us anything, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's just that noir thing of the hero accumulates injuries throughout the story to show that things are getting tense or that time is passing.
Yeah, like we're in the trenches almost.
But it doesn't really feel quite the same here because they're still in their protected ivory tower in the middle of Manhattan where they're not really going to be injured by these things.
I mean, right, for the cast of this crew, one of the most like serious things that happens to them in this episode, again excluding Elliot because he is just like a vehicle for them to introduce Amen here.
Yeah.
But like the most serious thing is like Charlie yells at a guy who's on a morning talk show host in his ear and like threatens his life like he's in a Clint Eastwood movie or something.
Mm-hmm.
Because after Nina publishes another gossip column on Will, this morning talk show, very much a Good Morning America, like Hoda and Kathy Lee Gifford are on there, except the Kathy Lee role is replaced by Patrick Fabian, an actor who I really like. People might recognize him from Better Call Saul and a bunch of other stuff. He's very good at like playing a sleazeball or a shithole. Aw.
Oh boy.
Aw. Or like
now you're dating our podcast.
I really didn't mean to. That just shows how like ingrained the news is in my head.
Mm-hmm.
he's just like a terrible guy.
Yeah.
For better or for worse. And so he's like, oh, it looks like Will's cheating on his girlfriend again. He's doing bad stuff. And then Charlie's like, I will eat you and feed you to my dogs and destroy your life.
That was pretty cool. I really liked Charlie, like, put me in this fucking air. That's fun. Let's talk about the plot that got the morning show talking, because I guess this is one of the bigger side plots of the episode. The whole situation with Mac and her nice boyfriend Wade, who turns out to be not nice. Wade is running for some kind of political office, and he's been on the show a few times. Mac didn't know, Will didn't know that he was running for office, and so now there's heat coming down on them that's saying, like, oh, her boyfriend has been on the show quite a bit, maybe she's trying to boost his chances, which only in Aaron Sorkin's world of the newsroom does that have that much scrutiny.
Man, it also concludes in probably the worst looking scene of this entire show.
Yeah.
So we're worried about Wade. We're like, oh, Wade is a liar? Is he bad? Is he terrible? What's going on? And then Mackenzie asks him to go up to the balcony of the building and confronts him on this balcony, which is like so blue screened.
Baby, what's up? I've been out on the balcony for an hour. It's snowing out here. I'm really cold.
Why'd you make me come up here? I did it on purpose. Why? Because you're a piece of garbage. But why? But and she's like, just talks him down, and like their breath is CG and the snow is CG, and he's in front of a blue screen. It looks like what's that really bad bird movie? Birdemic. It looks like Birdemic or like Sharknado shit. It's so bad looking. And a lot of shows from this era have that problem where, like, whenever they try to do...
I think we're still in this era.
Yeah, I mean, when I say this era, I mean the one we're watching and the one we're in.
Okay, all right.
Where because of budget, like, they can do sets really well, but when people have to go somewhere that's outside of the set, you just see the budget strain from that.
Yeah, sure.
And I get it. Like, filming at a different set is hard, but, like, just get a better skyline JPEG or something. Holy moly. It's rough. And basically she says, like, get out of my life, you stink, you're out of here. And so Wade is bad, and Mac breaks up with Wade, and all is good in the world, except there's like 6 more subplots in this episode.
Yes, there are. Let's just, the ones that we don't want to talk about, can we just like
yeah, the Egypt one. No. Yeah.
Peepus room. Let's talk about Jim and Don and Maggie and Lisa. Let's talk about all the bad things.
And the bad
yes, dude. Yes.
I'm so happy.
Very well done. All right. So
there's no way that'll sound good over editing. Basically, yeah, it's Valentine's Day, and Maggie has a nice date planned with Don. It's not John. And she's mad because Lisa is gonna like try to third wheel and be awkward with them, and so she's like, get this girlfriend out of here. Basically begs Jim to go out with her and to have sex with her roommate so that she will be busy all night, because this plot entirely centers around Lisa being obsessed with Valentine's Day and being the type of girl that's constantly disappointed by men, which that part's relatable.
Obsessed with Valentine's Day and has never had a good Valentine's Day and will forcibly ruin Maggie's Valentine's Day. Yeah. I feel like we've had more scenes of people talking about Lisa than Lisa talking. And so it's just sort of like, it's my crazy friend. That's what felt very, very sitcom-y about this.
They're doing all these like hoops. They're jumping through all these hoops just to get Lisa to placate Lisa like she's a shark in the water. Like you gotta get her these chocolates. You gotta get her this sexy lingerie, and you have to fuck her, and you have to give her all. Nice...
I've already reserved your like restaurant and your whatever and this and that.
The hotel.
It's nuts. It's so much.
No girl is like that. No woman is like that. Come on.
It's not consistent with Maggie's character because isn't she conflicted about this gym stuff? And wasn't she jealous of him being with her roommate? And now she's just unabashedly like, hey, Jim, I really want to fuck Dawn in a hotel. So I've concocted this elaborate scheme.
Yeah.
To make sure that I get to fuck Dawn in a hotel.
And Dawn's like, I'm gonna fuck Maggie in a hotel. Oh, yeah.
And the whole time Jim's like, wait, Dawn got a hotel for you and me? What? That's
so weird.
What?
No, but what it really
situation.
What it really climaxes in is Lisa comes to the office, publicly berates Jim, and then Maggie defends Jim's honor and is like, no, he's actually a good guy. You need to like him. He's a good guy. Because A, we need Maggie to defend Jim because they like each other. And B, every time a guy is shitty on the show, a woman has to spend the whole episode defending him. Why does this keep happening?
Oh my god.
Why does this keep happening? Why is that Mackenzie's entire character is that Will needs to be protected? Why? Aaron! Stop!
Come on, bud.
It's bad. There's nothing else to say about it. It's bad.
All right.
It doesn't actually occupy that much time in the episode, but it's super bad.
Yeah, we'll just leave it behind. The only other thing that Jim and Maggie do is they are investigating. Is that this episode where they're investigating a harassment claim against Will?
That's the second episode.
That's the second one.
Yeah. In this episode, they're talking about. In this episode, they're doing the teacher strike stuff.
Right. Okay.
Which I thought would be cool to talk to you about as a teacher, but they don't bring it up that much.
No, not really. It's not really a teacher thing. It's more just about the idea of it being a union thing. And it's a way for them to rehash or think about Citizens United. But they don't, I don't know, they don't really do it in that meaningful of a way.
You know what's funny? If this was an anime, God, first of all, God. Second of all,
I'm hooked. Tell me more.
You've sold me on your premise, and now please continue. If this was an anime, them bringing up the Koch brothers and Citizens United over and over again would end with like this episode would end with like a shadowy two old men petting the same cat, right, talking about like, oh, another notch in our belts, ha 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 ha.
Yeah.
And then like at the end of the season, we finally meet one of the Koch brothers, and he like falls into a volcano. That's what this show is doing with the whole Koch brothers controversy, is like building up to some sort of climax that I don't even remember if we get. It's just so convenient and not inspiring at all to blame all these big societal issues on like the Koch brothers. Obviously, they're doing a ton, and they are at the helm of the sort of conservative takeover of local America, which is a huge problem in our political society. But presenting every issue as stemming from them leads to a very easy cynicism of like, oh man, the Koch brothers run everything. What are we supposed to do? What's the average person supposed to do? They're just going to crush this and crush that and advance the corporate agenda. It's not really a call to action, and it's also not really that nuanced of a point, because it's just saying everything bad is because of the Koch brothers. They're immortal. They're invincible. We're not going to be able to do anything about them. That's the news. That's how you do it right. Blaming the problems with conservative America on a shadow government, on like shadow investors and shadow brokers and all that stuff, really like relieves the tension on the average American.
Right. It makes people feel like they're not culpable in what's going on. It's not my
fault that the world is like falling apart. Like, it's the rich people. It's their fault. We should take them down.
Which, hey, I'm all for tearing down the rich.
Same.
Super, super for it. Definitely try to push my students to have some anti-capitalist tendencies in my class.
I love it.
But at the same time, it's just shallow and a little lazy to think that this is the right way of doing things, presenting things in this exact way.
Speaking of shallow and lazy.
Yeah? Yeah?
Sloan has to explain to Mac how the Glass-Steagall Act works because Sloan... Okay, just a couple of like actually shallow and dumb things. Neil punching a computer monitor because Glenn Beck is being an asshole. Relatable, sure. How'd you break your hand? He's like, he broke his hand in several places. And it's like, Aaron Sorkin, do you know how wounds work?
Hands, listen, I'll tell you, hands are surprisingly...
They break easily?
They break easily. There are a lot of small bones in there.
Little tiny, delicious. I ate the bones.
I ate the bones?
Just picturing that guy like eating his hand and going, I ate the bones. But so he does that, and then Mac gets made fun of several times in this episode for being dumb, and then is told to like go on air and talk about the economy. And she's like, "But I don't know about money. I don't know how one
She's
plus
like
one
going
works."
to a conference or something, I think is what it is.
Yeah, it's the Paley Center.
Yeah. Oh yeah, so they do film it. Yeah, you're
right. And so she has Sloane tell her all about this stuff in a bar, in these scenes where just the worst bullshit of like, oh, Will doesn't like me anymore. And she's like, no, but Glass-Steagall was about this. And she's like, but Will.
Sloane, hold on. We're two women in a scene. We can't just talk about economics the whole time.
Please allow me to talk about the man, please.
Can I just quickly? Oh, my phone's ringing. Got to talk about the man.
It's a text from the man. Oh my God. And then they clearly are trying to make this joke about like how the two things are connected. Right. Because Sloane keeps asking her, like, how did it fall apart? Why did it fall apart? How did it fall apart? Referring to Glass-Steagall and the dissolution of the separation between corporate investment and commercial banks. But Mac keeps taking it to be about Will and her's relationship and the whole situation with Elliot. And it's, or no, yeah, not with Elliot, with Wade. It sucks. It sucks. It's worthless. That's all I'm here to say.
Yeah.
You know who's not worthless is Elliot. Elliot's alive. I'm so happy. My boy's safe.
I liked Elliot in this episode.
It's kind of weird, the scene where his wife and him are in the middle of the room and they're like doing a stand-up routine to everyone.
Yeah.
Because she is being like, thank you to everyone for all the nice things and emails and letters. And for the strippers that look like Egyptian police, blah, blah, blah. And, and then that just leads to a really dumb, useless joke where a stripper walks in and goes, I'm here to beat the fascist government. And then they're like, get out of here. Go away, stripper. Yeah. This isn't the show for that.
I know. That's another sitcom beat for sure.
I think there's a screenwriting word for that thing where you put a non sequitur at the end of a scene to segue. I think it's called a non sequitur, but it's just that. It's just like, hey, anyways, like the equivalent of the cane dragging somebody off a stage.
Right.
The only thing I wanted to mention about Elliot was I really liked the little touch that Elliot is so injured that he can't do the news, but they still want him on there to show that like our journalists out there are getting beat up. And then
I really liked that conundrum that came out between Charlie, Don, and Elliot, where Don so desperately wanted, like, Don is kind of fame hungry, in a way that's interesting, and that they've showed a little bit, and that I want to see shown more. Yeah, sorry, what were you gonna say?
Oh, sorry, just the fact that Charlie kisses Elliot behind the ear.
That was great. Yeah,
that was really cute.
I really liked that. That was nice.
And then basically all this stuff wraps up with the scene in the bar where Will and Nina are preparing to basically close a deal. And again, the one time we have the black guy be useful is that he tells Will that he used to work for TMI News and that everybody there accepts bribes, which is hilarious. That just show keeps like lifting up gossip columns to be so important that they are put on the exact same pedestal as the news. As like the regular news media, which is intentional, but they're corrupt. They take bribes. It's like,
yeah.
So he's like, I guess I'll write her a check, and goes to the bar and prepares to write her a check, and she's like, come on, Will, you and me, we're journalists, and then he goes, and there is something I don't know why, but there's something very Aaron Sorkin about that moment where he looks and he goes, see, you talk too much, and first of all, I want to say that to every character on the show always. Is you just talk too much when you don't need to. But he puts the pen down and goes, well, I'm not, you're not. And she's like, I'm a journalist. And he's like, you're also an asshole. It's just you and your dumb crew of people. They don't know anything. And he's like, don't call my crew dumb. This guy's good and this girl's good. And this guy almost died 6 times.
Yeah.
And you mentioned this scene earlier. And the thing I wanted to mention about it was that it feels like, I mean, it's very clear that Will McAvoy is in a lot of ways an Aaron Sorkin stand-in on the show,
right? Yes,
and a sounding board. I feel like this scene is almost Aaron Sorkin like defending the quality of his characters, because he's like promoting the fact that they're ridiculous cartoon people who do all this wacky stuff, because at the end of the day they get their jobs done. And there might be like something metatextual to him being like, no, they're not bad. Like everyone talks about my characters being badly written. Like, no, they're actually really good, and I love them, and don't fuck with them.
Right. Yeah. It's sort of trying to engineer in us an affection towards these people who we, I'm not saying I don't have affection towards them. I have some, but it does feel very manufactured, and it feels like. I mean, the thing that's trying to be accomplished here is, look, Will is becoming a cool guy.
He cares,
which is, yeah, I don't know. I like that. I'm not gonna tear that apart because I like the sentiment. Just the reality of it.
I just wish I liked the characters more ultimately.
Yeah.
Or at all. It's weird though, because the characters I do like are the ones that never get any dialogue. Like Tess finally gets some moments in the show. One where Maggie's like, you can't have sex in a bathtub, and then Tess essentially like cartoonishly pops out from the side of the screen and is like, actually you can have sex in a bathtub, you just kind of put your legs in it, and they're like, ah.
Yeah, that's funny.
And then the other scene where Lisa is freaking out, and then Tess kind of diffuses the situation by being like, oh, our phone's swapped again, you go to the same nail salon I do, oh my god. Try Sabra hummus. It has 0 grams of trans fat and oh my god, cholesterol. There's the episode wraps up with a really bad moment because every time they're in a group, basically Will references Rudy, the film, the 80s film about a football player. What's up?
I know that the term spirit animal is not the right term that we should be using for this concept anymore, but whatever the opposite of that concept is, for me, that is men talking about sports movies.
Like they're the best things in the world.
Yeah, that is like the exact opposite of what I want.
Weirdly, I feel like Jim in these scenes where everyone's like, how have you not seen Rudy? And he's like, I was doing other things. I was a kid. What do you want from me?
Yeah, get over it, guys.
Because every time, whenever people reference sports movies in this way that makes them feel like they define their lives, I'm like, I didn't watch any of these. I don't know. I know Remember the Titans is good because there's like there's like racism stuff in there, but like a lot of it's dumb, and not everybody saw that stuff, and like assuming this sort of cultural there's a word for like the thing that everybody has experienced. I guess gestalt is like a close enough word.
Sure.
But at least for men specifically, that like we've all seen that movie, and like, yeah, Rudy, the scene with the jersey. And I had to look it up when I watched this the first time, and I had to look it up again because I haven't seen Rudy. Mm-hmm. But basically they talk about the scene where everybody hands over their jerseys because Rudy doesn't get to play in the final game. And basically after finding out that Ahmed was captured by the Egyptian police and put in prison, he writes a check to pay him off, to basically pay for his bail, and everybody goes in and gives him like their small money checks to pay him back for being a nice guy. And it's like, obviously the Rudy thing is cute, but imagine going to the bank with 45 $10 checks. That was the only thing I could think of during that scene, was like,
oh my god,
my sister's a bank teller, and let me tell you, like,
holy shit, that's funny.
Cashing one check is a pain in the ass. Imagine cashing these like 50 crumpled up like different banks bespoke checks. God. What a pain for Will, and what a pain for everybody at the bank that's just like, what the fuck, this guy just brought like 35 checks with like $100 on each one. Like what does he want us to do with this? Whew. And yeah, it's the sentiment that counts, but like,
listen, I liked it in the first 15 seconds of it, where I got what they were doing, and then he stepped out into the center floor.
It's like, yeah, there's a line.
And literally, we haven't talked about the Egypt plotline yet. We'll talk about that in a second, because it was the good part of this episode. Yeah. But literally, there's a young man in Egypt who's given up his anonymity, risking his life and limb to bring the truth to the American people. And as soon as he's like, here's the stuff, for the rest of the episode, we don't see him again. He's just talked about. And the triumphant moment is for the white guy who had the money to do the thing. The rich white man steps out and everybody's like, yeah, you did
What a nice guy.
You did the big part. You're a really good guy. And he's like, no, please, thank you, please.
And that last shot plays like something out of a bad Disney Channel movie where like the camera is panning upwards as everyone's walking through the line. Meanwhile, Neil is in the front of the shot looking at a Skype call with Ahmed and being like, oh man, it's my friend. And it's like you can't hear them talking because the audio is replaced by music. And it's like so cheesy, but it's like that guy almost died covering a war. And we're like, good job. This guy paid a bunch of money. Like, it's so bad. It's so nakedly what the show always is, which is like championing these people over the people that they're helping out.
Yeah.
They always do this. The show never gets better about this. It's so frustrating.
I think it's perfectly valid to show Will making the choice of, I'm not going to pay off the gossip columnist. I'm going to pay to get this guy free. That's cool. That's a good move for his character to make because it says a lot about where he's come from and what he's valuing.
Yeah, he can be selfless sometimes.
Yes. But then making everybody celebrate him totally robs him of that selflessness. And it
does
does
he just
not
gets to have his moment.
Yeah, then it doesn't feel like a step forward for his character. It just feels like a part of his performance, I guess.
Speaking of Egypt, this is actually a really big thing that happens in this episode. At the beginning of the episode, we are in February of 2011, and February 10th specifically, and the Arab Spring is happening, and it just basically we're in the heat of it.
Yeah.
There's no internet in Egypt. Hosni Mubarak has been deposed by the people in a democratic coup, and voted out by a person that I think someone in this episode describes as like his political cousin, essentially, like someone who's not that much better. But the point is, it's the thought of the matter. It's the fact that Egypt didn't have a democracy forever, but people wanted it, and finally they like rose up and took down the person that was ruining their lives for so long.
Mm-hmm.
And for us, that is something that's really inspirational. And I remember at the time a lot, like I do remember actually hearing about this at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Partly because my family's from the Middle East, and like the Arab Spring affected the entire Middle East. But like the idea that like maybe in America we could someday have the wherewithal to like go. We can use things like social media and the news and the way that we publish our information online to help us showcase and broadcast to the world, like, hey, there's a revolution happening here. The revolution will, in fact, be televised. Mm-hmm. There's something really inspiring about that. Like, it's not just going to happen and then be gone. It's going to happen and we're going to have record of it. And that's why Amen is so important, is he is that for this channel, for ACN. And it's really inspiring. Like, I those scenes of, like, all the people chanting, we are Egypt, we are free Egyptians, really got to me and was very emotional. Just because of like how much I remembered about what was going on at the time, but like, I don't know, seeing Elliot is just like in his apartment, just like hanging out, like, hey, anyways, so some stuff's going on. Hey, there's gunshots, and I was so glad they didn't like kill Elliot or something in that scene.
Yeah, right.
Because then that immediately brings up the question of like, are the rebels bad? Like, who killed him? Like, did rebellion like lead to somebody dying? Does that make it a bad thing? Mm-hmm. But instead, no, he just gets beat up by some. He does get beat up by some protesters, and the implication is like, well, he had to come back, so we got to find somebody on the inside because they don't have regular internet, so we have to use someone who has like backup, like third tier, peer-to-peer network VPNs. Mm-hmm. And so of course they're like, internet boy, brown boy. Those are the two things that you are, Neil.
They literally say you live on the internet. Like, you should know how to do this.
And he doesn't deny it. Yep. He's just like, yeah, I do live on the internet, and I do know a guy that's there. He's my buddy.
Yeah, that was not the best way to get there. I will say, I really, really appreciated the thinking through this ethical quandary of, obviously they can't send one of their white American reporters to figure out what's going on because they're not going to be accepted into the situation. It's going to be dangerous for them. And so if you need somebody who lives there who is a native of the area, how do you navigate if you can trust them? How do you navigate how to make sure they're protected without taking on too much liability? Those are some valid questions that I really appreciated the tension that went into examining them and to placing them at the center of the episode's conflict.
Right. It isn't just about them. And they treat Amen with a lot of respect when they're on the calls with him. And all those scenes are handled with a lot of really good weight of like, we need to use your name. You're a valid source. What kind of camera do you have? And he's like, and I also like that because he's a young person, he's not like a cartoon Egyptian.
Yeah.
He also, even, this is just a minor touch, but like they chose to cast a like relatively light-skinned Egyptian actor, which is appropriate because in Egypt, like there are like not every, like the vast majority of people in Egypt are like light brown skinned and not dark brown skinned. But that's beyond the point. Basically, it's cool that they got a guy who's actually a professional and like is a young person who speaks good English and has the technology to do this the way it needs to be done. And they don't treat him like a young rookie. They treat him like a journalist.
Yeah, they treat him with respect. He's a character that delivers on what he promises. It's nice, yeah.
He doesn't like turn out to be a rebel or like turn out to be a secret spy or anything like that.
Yeah.
And he doesn't get killed. So like it's actually handled pretty well. And that's why we were like, yeah, this is the one good plot in this not good episode.
Yeah. It's pretty much all I got.
Yeah, same. I mean, I don't really have any other interesting notes here unless you do.
I like the line where, I don't remember the exact context, but Will McAvoy says, Jesus, there are 800,000 websites? It was like his story was picked up or posted on that many websites or something.
It's all right, let's list them. Google, Neopets, CartoonNetwork.com,
Google
GeoCities.
Google Maps.
Google Maps.
Images, Google Maps.
Google Video.
Yep, Google YouTube.
Google.com/YouTube. Hold on. Do you think?
Of course.
Do you super think?
Of course, dude.
No, it's a 404 error. Take that.
What?
Get fucked, Google. I'm going to buy Google.com/YouTube right now.
Oh, that's really going to mess with those guys.
Somebody at Google right now is like, shit, the Chats boys are at it again.
Wow.
Sorry. Yeah, Google.com/YouTube does not redirect to YouTube. It should.
Foolish.
But John, do you want to talk about some stuff that happened around this time in history?
Yeah, let's do it. According to the Wikipedia page for current events on February 10th, 2011, got a couple here to talk about. First of all, sports news. Ray Allen, basketball man.
Yep. Celtic.
Oh, hey, that's where it's our region.
Yeah, I have his jersey.
No.
The only reason I have his jersey...
You have his jersey?
Because it says... Yeah, I bought it from him. No, I have a jersey that says his name on it because it says Allen on the back, and that's hilarious.
That's funny.
I do, though. Yeah.
I wish Ferdinand Magellan had played for the Celtics. That would
I think he played for the Jazz.
Yeah. You like jazz? I don't know what that's from, but you always say that.
It's from B-Movie.
Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah.
You always say that. I'm so annoying. I quote B-Movie. I quote B-Movie to my friends all the time. I'm the worst.
What's the deal with me?
What's the deal with my sense of self?
Ray Allen, surpassed Reggie Miller for the all-time NBA record for three-point field goals made. That's not what they're called. Field goals?
No. I
don't know that I can trust not YouTube, Wikipedia.
Google.com/YouTube.
Google.com/Wikipedia. Also on here, hey, did you know that the British House of Commons voted against prisoners receiving the right to vote?
Wait,
pretty decisively.
Why not? Why can't they vote?
I think it's because they're prisoners.
Can American U.S. prisoners vote?
Oh, boy. Maybe we shouldn't be hosting a podcast about the news.
Well, no, because 70% of like America. This is first of all, before someone corrects me, this is a wrong statement I'm about to say. 70% of Americans are in prison. But you know what I mean? Like so many people are in prison.
This is part of the big movement or controversy around the disproportionate imprisonment of men of color because many states disenfranchise felons.
That's what I'm saying. So like a percentage of people that wouldn't vote, like would or would not vote for a certain person, are in prison and can't.
Yes, we're speaking as if we're just discovering this, but this is a very well discussed, well trod.
Now I'm going to tell you about a show called Orange Is the New Black.
Now hold on, just 1 minute.
So girls in prison.
And then the only other thing that's jumping out at me is there's a big snowstorm? No.
There was a huge, the 2011 snowstorm.
Yeah, whatever.
There was a really big, scary snowstorm in 2011. I vaguely remember. I more remember the 2014 snowstorm because that affected my life.
North Korea reports that it will not conduct further talks with South Korea, citing a perceived lack of seriousness on South Korea's part. And 7 years later, we could just copy-paste that headline and...
you put that in every day since then.
Yeah.
Sad face.
Sad face.
Yeah, I think that's the news, Magellan.
That is the news that's fit to speak.
We're going to cut to the... Well, I'm going to keep that silence also, and then we're going to cut to the news bag. And Magellan, I think we're going to be right back. And you know what we're going to do after that, Magellan?
What are you going to do?
We're going to discuss the next episode of the Newsroom, Bullies. Hello, listeners. Welcome back to the News Bag, where I, Alan, read and discuss your feedback regarding our television show, podcast, The ChatzRoom. That was hard to say. It's the feedback segment. How you doing? I'm doing well. We got an email from our buddy Dan. He says, okay, I'm in. Which really feels like we got him in like a blood pact situation. He says, I find that while I don't think this is a good show, it's still a compelling show. It fits with your discussion format so well because it's the nature of the show to create beautiful grist for the mill. My general feeling as I watch this show has been, I think I see why people like this, but I also see why those people are wrong. Which is a really good point. Every time I read about this show, I find pockets of the internet that say like, this was the best, this show was canceled so soon, this was amazing, this was better than The West Wing, blah blah blah. And I'm like, what show were you watching? Dan says that was me, by the way. Dan says, I roped my wife into watching the show with me because I found that the true joy of it comes from the ability to look over at the other person watching with a complete look of disbelief, only to have the other person meet your gaze with the same disbelief. My wife had described it as watching a solid hour drama intercut with a scene after scene of angsty teenage crap lifted straight from the CW. The Maggie, Donna, Jim stuff is virtually unwatchable. They're all just thoroughly awful people who I don't care about. Yes, poor clueless Maggie and White Knight Jim are awful people too, and we should hate them more because the show tries to present them as decent. At least Dawn isn't saddled with that same ridiculous pretense. That's a very good point. That's what Magellan was saying. I find myself wondering why I should care about some side story about awful people mistreating each other in petty, pointless ways. Here's a bit of personal trivia I discovered. I really dislike the name Sloane Sabbath. It's too cartoony and fake to be taken seriously. Yeah, Sloane Sabbath feels like a comic book name or something. I know you compare it to McLovin in here. Regarding Amen, when they had the Rudy reference, I started saying fa, and at the end when they started giving little checks to mimic the Jersey scene, I was able to conclude finally with uck. What an odd, ill-fitting parallel. The irony, which I can only assume to be completely missed by Sorkin, is that it was a scene completely made up in the Rudy movie and didn't happen in real life. Yeah, that's like the textbook version of the we added this to the movie because no one does this in real life. His big takeaway from Bullies was that the show hasn't figured out what its format is yet, and that certainly wasn't a revelation that Will is a bully. In general, the show often has frustrating moments where the newscast benefits from hindsight that the characters wouldn't have had. There are scenes when I just throw my hands up in the air and say, are these characters reading the script ahead of time? And it's weird when they complete a broadcast and go on a big moral victory lap from the presumed victory of covering the correct news and getting the facts right about a story when everyone else preemptively got it wrong. The show might actually have major impact had it been based on a real news program at the time that was preternaturally accurate and was doing the morally superior job of reporting news that mattered. Instead, It feels a bit like Sorkin is taking a victory lap himself for representing what he thinks the news should actually be. And finally, he concludes with a part 2 saying, a good thing that I want to say about this episode, Amen, is that, mercifully, it didn't cover the awful Lara Logan stuff that happened during her reporting from Tahrir Square. Thank you, Dan. That was a really rewarding email to read. That was really good. You hit on a lot of good points. You reiterated a lot of stuff that we said in our show. And yeah, I mean, this is like what the news bag is just going to be, is people confirming to us that yes, the show is terrible, and then me confirming it back to them. It's bad. It's just, there's something good in there. Like, I think we can all agree that we watch the scenes where the news happen and people are yelling at each other's ears and stuff is getting thrown onto the graphic screen last second. There's just something cool about that. Like, I want to watch, and as Dan says, like, how cool would it be if there was a real news studio that was like this, where they kept getting things right and they were shooting for complete accuracy and getting ahead of things. Like, what if that existed? What would that be like? And this show doesn't posit that. It more just feels like Sorkin feeling good about himself, which, as a white man in Hollywood, he doesn't really need. He's kind of got it going for him, and that's, I think, one of the things that's super frustrating about the show. But I mean, we're gonna keep watching it. We have a lot of show to go. We're actually getting towards the end of season 1 though, but you know, the show must go on. The news must go on, and I'm gonna go take it back to Alan and Magellan as they wrap up their discussion of Bullies.
Welcome back to the ChatzRoom. The second episode we watched this week was Season 1, Episode 6, Bullies, written by Aaron Sorkin and directed by Jeremy Podeswa. It aired on July 29th, 2012, and it takes place on and around March 11th, 2011. Hi, Alan.
Hey, how's it going?
You're still here. Welcome back. And me, welcome back too. What happened in Bullies?
Well, Magellan, Will has insomnia. While visiting his psychiatrist, Dr. Habib the Younger, he recounts the reasons for his recent stress. After Will convinced Sloan to push for the truth in an interview with a Japanese spokesperson for the Fukushima Reactor Corporation, TEPCO, Sloan goes too far and quotes off-the-record information about the escalation of the reactor failure. She's almost suspended for ethical reasons, but Charlie saves the day by telling her to lie about mishearing the difference between the Japanese words for two different numbers. Will is also racked with guilt over an aggressive interview that he had with the spokesperson for Rick Santorum that backfires. And finally, Maggie and Jim are told by Mackenzie to dig up some dirt on Will after he's almost accused of sexual harassment. All this leads to is Will buying a ring to make Mac think he always meant to propose to her. Dr. Habib allows Will to go with the sleep aid he requested, provided he starts actively concerning himself with his mental health. Whew! Spicy. I'm going to go ahead and jump the gun here and say that I liked most of this episode.
Hey, me too.
Well, great minds think alike, Magellan. Let's talk about it. First of all, before
best one so far, I think. Is that fair to say?
I do think that's fair to say. Yeah, this is like surprisingly good. We usually just land on the trend of the second episode we discuss every week being like lesser for some reason. That happens a lot with us, but not so this time. I
think it's easy to get exhausted watching two of these episodes in a row too.
Yeah, definitely. You're less likely to be gravitate towards something in the second one because you just watched one. Yeah.
Yeah.
I just, before I forget, I'm sorry to keep bringing it up, but like, this was directed by Jeremy Podeswa, who also directed some episodes of Game of Thrones. I knew I had heard that name somewhere.
Oh.
So
Okay.
HBO shares their directors, I guess. And then another recent episode was, I think, co-written or directed by Gideon Yago, who, this is from last week, was like a very famous MTV VJ back in the early 2000s.
Okay.
I read that name and I was like, where do I know that name? And I typed it into Google and all I got was famous MTV VJ and later writer Gideon Yago. And I was like, whoa.
Huh.
Or he not necessarily a VJ, but like the guy who did like MTV News. Like he was like a name that he definitely came on at like 9 o'clock on MTV and was like, hi, I'm Gideon Yago talking about Beyonce's new music video.
That's cool.
So they brought on a lot of weird talent. And that's also a really interesting career trajectory, but that's neither here nor there. Yeah. Bullies is a great episode. It goes a lot of places. It doesn't land well with all of them, but it's not saccharine the way the Rudy stuff is in the previous episode. And I didn't find myself actively hating any significant chunks of it. Mm-hmm. Where do we want to start? Do we want to start with the framing device of Dr. Habib's visit?
Yeah, let's do that. So Will is having trouble sleeping. It's revealed through a conversation with Mac that he has a standing appointment with a psychiatrist because he finds it, I guess, easier to get medication prescribed through a psychiatrist. And he doesn't like going to his own doctor, but he hasn't been to a psychiatrist in, I think, 4 years at this point. At
At
the beginning of the
least.
episode. Is that right? Something like that. So he goes to his psychiatrist's office, and it's eventually revealed to us part of this. So Will kind of spins the yarn of all of the things that are causing him stress. One of the biggest ones is that recently he's received a death threat through the comment section of the station's website. So that's part of what's going on here. He's there with his bodyguard at Dr. Habib's office, who we find out is the son of his former psychiatrist who has died in the time in which Will was not going to see a psychiatrist. Which that was a nice narrative moment, I think.
And a good reminder, by the way, that Will is like very rich. Is
very
that
rich and like callous. Yeah.
and the fact that he's been paying for visits to a psychiatrist to say that he's doing it but not going to them, and that he has a financial guy that does that, and that he has the privilege to go to a psychiatrist instead of a doctor, because basically the way that line worked out was, you know, if you want to go to your primary care to get medication, it takes a lot of time. Like, scheduling a doctor's appointment takes fucking forever.
Right.
Psychiatrists want you to go to their appointments because they can charge you over $100, and you just go, and that's the point. Whereas with doctors, it's like, oh, I got to give you 30 minutes of checkups and maybe blah, blah, blah. Point is, he's right. It is easier to get that if you have the privilege to do that. And he acknowledges how much economic privilege he has, and he's like, yeah, I was giving money to you for years before I realized that you're not your dad. Whoops. Anyways. And his the younger Dr. P was played by David Krumholtz. That guy that you know from like everything.
Yeah, he's in Elf. That was the first place I encountered him.
Yep.
Says the kind of curmudgeonly older elf.
He was in How I Met Your Mother.
Like old. Yeah, he had a brief moment on Freaks and Geeks, which we talked about when we talked about that show.
Oh yeah! Oh yeah!
Oh yeah! Generally, I like David Krumholtz. I think he's a pretty charismatic guy. He's also in Numbers, right?
Yeah, he's like the side guy in Numbers. You're right.
Yeah, I liked that show when I was younger.
I like Drop 7. That's a really obscure reference. Basically, real quickly, Drop 7 was an iPhone game that they made as part of a Numbers promotion, but it actually turned out to be a good iPhone game, and then Numbers got canceled. Bam! Little video game history for your ass.
Nice.
So
I tend to like David Krumholtz. I didn't love his characterization at first here, because it seemed like the only direction he was getting was, hey, could you kind of scrunch your lips up a little bit more and give us that line again?
Why do you feel like that? Why are you being an asshole?
It was hard for me to tell how he felt about Will. I think by the end of the episode, I sort of realized that he had kind of made it a personal mission to break down Will's barriers. But at first he seemed annoyed by him, like annoyed that he was there. So
he clearly doesn't like.
It's hard to pin him down.
Yeah. I think it's more that he's going for like. You see him at the beginning trying to approach Will the way you would approach any other patient and like ask them realistic questions about their motivations. And then when he realizes that Will is like the type of asshole who doesn't budge when you ask him basic stuff because he's self-centered, you have to kind of get a little rough with him. And so that's why he's like, why are you fucking me over? Like, why are you lying to me and telling me nothing? And then that's sort of the development of their relationship.
Is he more of a character? Because I'd love to see more of it.
He appears in the 2-part finale, in the Blackout Tragedy parts 1 and 2.
Okay, interesting. All right.
I don't know if he's important, but he comes back that time.
Gotcha. Well, then I guess we'll hear more from him a little bit later. Anyway, so I ended up liking the character. Kind of a bummer that he's not going to be more of a regular, maybe every once in a while kind of guy. That's okay. Yeah, so he essentially tricks Will into spilling his guts, and then at the end, it's revealed like, oh, the reason you're not sleeping is because of the bacon that you're eating on your
toast.
And your toast.
Toast. Scrambled eggs, bacon, and melted cheese on toast.
People, I feel like we don't get that much feedback about what we say sometimes, because people want to talk about the show. But like, are we crazy for how much we talk about Will McAvoy's accent?
I don't think so.
I don't think so. I mean, Coke is the way he says Coke is hilarious. The way he says toast is funnier. And he says it so fast.
It was a big surprise to us. Listen, this was the biggest moment of the episode for us, folks. Big surprise that he says the word toast that way.
Toast.
I remarked that it feels like he said the rest of the words and then like bit his lip on that one. We'll play a clip of it right here.
Toast.
So tell me that doesn't sound super weird.
I've been playing clips of it over.
Oh, this is we live in the clips of it. We're playing clips behind this talking.
Invented a new sandwich: scrambled eggs, bacon, and melted cheese on toast.
So he loves his toast. He eats a lot. He invented the like McDonald's breakfast sandwich.
Yeah.
Which is just eggs and bacon on bread. Good boy, he did it. That's a bad diet. That's really what's happening. Like really, literally. Tell me what happens in the present of this episode. Will goes to a psychiatrist who tells him he has a bad diet. Done. Did it.
Yeah, go home, bud.
Have a great episode. Yeah. But it unravels via that framing device in a way that I actually really like. I do mostly dislike a lot of the Newsroom, but I think its framing device episodes are really cool. I mean, the only last one we had...
I think Aaron Sorkin does a very capable job of nonlinear storytelling. We saw this with the Tea Party episode too, where he takes a setup that I think other writers would have a hard time making. Other writers would have a hard time making that sort of setup make sense, but Aaron Sorkin seems to do that in a way that it feels pretty natural.
Right. It doesn't feel like they have to like do a visual transition to show that we're going back and forth or anything. It's just like,
yeah, you just kind of get what's going on.
Yeah, it integrates really well. Even like when they cut back and forth to something that he just said in the past and they replay it again in the present, like I can't remember the specific moment, but it's something when he's yelling at the guy at the end of the episode and they play a line from him more than, or no, it's when he doesn't know how to end the episode and he's like, I'm Milwackaboy. Like they cut back to that one multiple times and you know where in the timeline it fits because it's edited well.
Yeah.
Anyways, Will is receiving death threats from comments on their website, and Neil, the internet nerd, has to try and make... he has this whole spiel. Will has this whole thing of like, we need to take away anonymity on the internet. I'm going to fix the internet. This is terrible. Why can't you have your name, your age, your location, and your level of education on every post you make?
Yeah, it's some real old man yelling stuff going on there.
Extremely old man yelling. Like... There are okay, yes, anonymity has ruined a lot of internet comments. However, anonymity also just allows people to be the horrible people that they are in real life, but with fewer consequences. Like it doesn't make people bad that they're anonymous, and also a lot of people are able to use anonymity and like usernames and handles on the internet to protect themselves.
Right.
Like it's not all bad,
right.
Is what I'm saying. But he wants to just shut all that down, and Neil tries to make a system to make everybody list their information. Somebody immediately breaks it within like 2 days. They have that stupid, like, the way that they always describe hacking in movies, which is normally something like this would take about 56 days from a genius. How long did he do it? 2 days. And then Mac's like, Jesus. Like, yeah, that's hacking. Great work.
Yeah.
So Will's worried about his life because he's got a death threat that lists his address.
He got a death threat related to... Why did he get the death threat again? After the interview?
Yeah, after the interview.
Okay.
All of that stuff was
what was the whole thing that they were doing about like that guy? Oh, he has students. Oh, it's something about students. Like they kept talking about students as if that was a connection.
Well, I think Will is getting the slow, like the guy's asking him like which basically the frame is which event that happened recently is like messing with your head and making it hard to sleep. And at first he's like, oh, it's the Sloan thing. And then at the end he's like, she was a teacher, she teaches. And he's like, you said he, or he says he's a teacher, he teaches. And the psychiatrist is like, why did you use the he pronoun? He's like, because I'm sleepy. And then the guy's like, no, actually, I'm pretty sure you're more stressed about the guy who is teacher that you yelled at on air. So I think the implication is that the first thing didn't actually bother him that much. It's more the second thing.
I see.
Or it's a combination of both.
That was not clear to me.
Yeah, but what he's saying is the guy who he talks about that is the Rick Santorum person is also a teacher and has students, and it's like unfair that those people have to look down to him. It's kind of confusing.
Right. Okay. All right. Anyway, so he gets this death threat. He needs to have a bodyguard. It's Terry Crews. That's pretty cool.
What's the guy's name? Lonnie?
Yeah, I don't remember.
Hold on, I wrote it down.
Basically, it's a pretty fun character for Terry Crews to be playing until the moment where he's like, "Hey, Mac, when are you and I gonna get busy?"
The
And
fucking
like,
worst.
Then it's like, okay, yucky.
Okay.
Yuck.
Lonnie Church. Amazing name. Terribly written black man. When am I gonna fuck the white lady? Like, what are you? It's like a 5-second line, but it's super bad.
Yeah.
And then she's like, and she takes it so seriously. She's like, I can't. I have plans or something. Like she said it
Yeah.
like she considered it. Oh, everything about it is bad.
Yeah, it's just not great.
Aaron.
Anyway, let's set that stuff aside.
Yes.
I think I don't really want to talk about Will McAvoy anymore.
Nah, me neither ever. Let's shut the show down.
All right, cool. Great.
Bye-bye. Bloop.
That's it, folks. I will say I really appreciated that he brought up William Jennings Bryan when he was talking about Populous, because I just taught a lesson that included William Jennings Bryan, one of my favorite figures in American history. Really,
Give me
really
the 10-second
fascinating
pitch.
guy. So William Jennings Bryan, he's a populist figure for farmers. He gives this amazing speech that says that basically capitalists in the North will not crucify farmers on a cross of gold. Oh man,
Ooh.
great image, right? So
Yeah.
he's this really rallying figure for the common man. He loses his election, not so great. And then later in life, he gets a little older. And hey, you remember the Scopes monkey trial?
Is that the one where the guy
The whole-
dies, gets assassinated, and no, he gets like his legs beaten up and he can't talk anymore? What's the
What?
thing I'm thinking of? You've recently explained it to me.
Oh, what?
It's the American history thing where the people were like, no, that they should have slaves. I'm so sorry, people at home. Where they're like, they should have slaves, and then he gets beaten up in the Senate, and they're like, whoa, that's crazy.
Oh, the caning of Charles Sumner.
That's the one. Yes.
So William Jennings Bryan is a populist. He gives this rallying cross of gold thing, and then later it turns out Scopes monkey trial, which is all about teaching evolution and the conflict between teaching evolution versus teaching what do you call that? Creationism.
Yep.
And it's like, oh, whoops, he's actually a really, really staunch creationist, and he's kind of going wackadoo in the middle of this court case. Isn't that crazy? Anyway, really fascinating guy. Caning of Charles Sumner. Charles Sumner is a northern abolitionist who's giving a speech, a scathing speech in the Senate in the 1850s, where he basically says that slavery is a prostitute and the South is her pimp and all this stuff, bad slavery stuff. And these guys are slavers and they're bad, and these guys and these guys. And so then Preston Brooks, representative from South Carolina, takes it very personally and decides that he needs to re-exert his honor and the honor of his family and his state by just going into the Senate chamber with his cane and just beating Charles Sumner until he has to be hospitalized for months. And nobody really does anything about it because Preston Brooks' friends have guns there in the middle of the Senate chamber, holding them up to other people, and it's nuts. And then the Civil War happened. So there you go.
Wow.
History time. Anyway, so Will brings up William Jennings Bryan. Thank you, sir, very much. Keep it alive.
Keep fighting
Now-
the good fight.
Keep fighting the good fight. Now, goodbye. Let's just Jim and Maggie. So they're on this sort of weird task where Mac asks them to look into accusations of Will being was it sexual harassment or it's just verbal harassment? Like, is it about him bullying and berating people? Is that what it was?
The way I remember it was there was somebody under Maggie's name reported that Will berated her publicly for doing something wrong and filed it under sexual harassment. It hasn't been formally taken through to the HR yet. So Mac is trying to stop it before it gets there and becomes an issue. So this is basically a pre-issue.
Right. They don't want it to become another story.
Exactly. So she's basically saying, guys, dig up everything that they could find and like tell me if there's any dirt that I should know. But also, if you find anything about me in there, maybe pass your girl a couple of those slips,
So they're doing this opposition research on Will, and they essentially find out that he's amazing and he hasn't had any problems.
He's like the most interesting man in the world. He's traveled a lot and like is a conservative. I like that joke about like, oh, he also wrote for like one of the George Bushes, and they're like, wait, he's a Republican? And she's like, yeah, he's what the fuck? Yes.
Yeah. Yes, guys. Yeah.
I guess we never thought about it, which is just the viewership of the show.
Anyway, so that all amounts to a hill of beans, pretty much, right?
Pretty much, yeah.
There's really no point to it, except, oh my goodness. Should I talk about Don's conversation with Sloane now, or should we wait for the Sloane plot?
Let's wait for the Sloane plot. What I remember from the Mackenzie stuff is that she finds out that he got an offer from Fox to be on a talk show in LA, and he was going to take it. Like, he almost took it. And she freaks out. She goes to confront him about it.
Right.
It turns out he bought her a ring and was totally planning to propose to her and not go to LA, and that it was a fake offer, and that he loves her, and then she's placated. But Dr. Habib is like, no,
it's a fake ring.
Yes. Dr. Habib is like, what? You're actually fucked up for buying a fake ring to do this whole plot.
Super fucked up. Super manipulative.
Super lying to your partner. You're like, yeah, she cheated on him, but like ultimately history will determine that like Will was the shitty guy, the shitty person in that relationship.
Or at least that they're, it's not one of them that is to blame.
It's not one-sided. Yeah.
But then it's like, oh, but it's redeeming because he kept the ring and got rid of the receipt. So, okay. We'll come back to that, I'm sure. That's Chekhov's ring right there.
Yes. Is there anything else left to talk about except the good Sloane plot?
I think it's pretty much the good Sloane plot. Yeah.
It's good.
It's really, I liked it a lot.
I like Dawn in this plot for once.
I always liked Dawn, and I also liked Dawn here.
I have grown to love Sloane. I know that she's written terribly a lot, and Olivia Munn's not the best actress in the universe, and she isn't. I'm just immediately reneging on my point I just said. I like Sloane. I like the idea that there's this character. She's like the one woman who cares about her respect, like self-respect, and like I like that a lot about her, because she is basically tasked with replacing Elliot for late night because his child has like getting a tonsillectomy, and so she's like, I guess I'll do it. And right before that, Will is like, hey, Olivia Munn, hey, Sloane, don't go soft on them. Don't let the people that you interview just like say stupid stuff and then let them go. You should challenge them and be a good news person. And she's like, all right, older man.
Yep.
Gets on the show.
Basically, the conflict is that Sloane first of all, Sloane speaks Japanese, and Olivia Munn actually speaks Japanese because she was raised in Japan.
Rock and roll.
Her life, rock and roll is pretty awesome. She has a pre-interview with a rep for the corporation that is involved in the Fukushima nuclear disaster, where she essentially gathers the information off the record that the reactor's at a level 7 instead of a level 4. And she tries to get that information on air. She tries to push for it, but she can't get it because the interpreter is translating things differently than what she's saying. First of all, super cool idea for this sort of tense scene where she's pushing and saying, that's not what I said, or you're misinterpreting me. And then she goes into speaking Japanese. I don't know why Charlie and Don were so upset about that, because if that happened on national television, that would be the most viral
It'd be sick as hell, actually.
That would be so cool. Like, imagine Anderson Cooper is interviewing somebody from, Germany or something, and then he just drops into some German in the middle of the interview. That'd be sick. That'd be awesome.
I mean, frustratingly, the reason that they're bothered by it is because a lot of like ratings culture and like what makes the news popular in their minds and in the corporate mind is like somebody needs to be able to tune into this and immediately know what's going on, and you can't go off topic, and you can't like freak out or flip a table, and you need to like keep it in an understandable like modern plain English way. And then literally flipping to Japanese, like imagine like 70-year-old woman turns on the TV and it's like, what the hell is this? And then they don't watch. It's
That's true.
bad for ratings to have people suddenly speaking a different language in an extended conversation. Like, that's just confusing to the viewer, I guess. But I
Yeah.
agree. Like, if I got to see a clip of this, I'd be like, whoa, like, I'm turning to this. I'm checking this out. What's going on?
Yeah. So really intense scene. Huge moral conundrum for Sloane. She's shown as a character who has competencies when it comes to economics, when it comes to knowing the Japanese language and the Japanese culture. And then she gets herself into a bad situation because she gives into, self-seriousness or hubris or something like that. It's just the kind of arc in this Sloane plot that you want to see from this show because
Yeah.
it shows what she's good at, and then it shows her coming up against a challenge that we haven't seen before, and then it gets resolved. And that's nice. I like that. I like that rhythm, and I like thinking about the ethical problems that are at hand here.
Right. Like you said at the first half, when people do the news and it's about them doing the news, the show rules. Everything else
I
sucks.
really, really wish, this is what I realized in this episode. I would like this episode or this show so much more if it was exactly the same, except that it was not framed as people doing the news right. It was just framed as people doing the news. If it was just a show about this is a news station that's trying to do their best, but it's not about like we are going to reform the news, it would be a much, much better show.
So, would you prefer a like documentary where you get to spend a day or a week in a newsroom, or do you want a dramatization that is just about them doing the news without the relationship drama, but it is dramatized? You know what I'm saying? Like, it is still this stuff, the big stories.
I think the Sloane plot more or less is what I am looking for.
Yeah,
which
I
is a
agree with you.
dramatized story about doing the news.
Yeah.
Where it's a morality play about a certain ethical problem that comes up with newsmaking or news doing. And it's not necessarily bogged down in sitcom bullshit. And it's not necessarily bogged down in vapid idealism. It's just about here's the problem that the character has to try to navigate, and we're going to explore this problem together right now.
This is a big reason why I was really excited to do this podcast with you, is because we get to talk about the stuff that in this show they don't delve into, but it's so fascinating. So, like, for example, I would love for them to have gone more in depth on the ethics of what it means to be off the record.
Right.
Not just say like, oh, even though it was off the record, she can't, like, it doesn't. And this is complicated enough that I cannot tell the listeners or you enough about it confidently. But I think off the record is supposed to mean this cannot be broadcast, but I can tell this to my people in my work. This is confidential within the work environment. I can't go online and tell you people about this. But that is the boundary. It's not like she tells the other people to leave the room, but then she immediately tells Will and Mac the off the record information. So it's like, where was the boundary supposed to be?
Well, I think she partially had them leave the room to make him feel more comfortable, and also partially maybe they were taking note of things, because she was speaking, but they were the ones taking note on the conversation.
Oh, so it's more about like what you wrote down.
Yeah, because the idea is if you're going to present something as fact, then you need proof that it's factual. So that proof either has to be in our interview beforehand, in our notes it says this, or it has to be what they're actually saying right in the moment. And she didn't have either of those things, which was the problem.
And it leads to her making a really accidental, terrible situation worse, by telling them that, hey guys, it's what he's saying. What the guy's actually saying, and what he told me off the record, is that this nuclear reactor is like deadly and it's gonna kill a ton of people. Run for the hills.
Right.
And I just yelled at him in Japanese, and then she closes it. Dawn freaks the hell out. Charlie freaks the hell out. She's suspended. She gets mad. She talks back to Charlie, which is like my favorite scene of the episode.
Mm-hmm.
Just the like two loudest voices, because Sloane up until that point has never been that loud. Like literally last episode or the New Year's Eve episode, she's like, I don't know how to talk to people, and now she's like, don't call me girl. And it's like, finally there's a woman on the show who stands up for herself and isn't terrible. Like, wow. For like 5 seconds I was so happy.
Aaron, you did it.
Except wait, what saves her at the end of the day is Charlie's brilliant plan.
Oh my god. Listen. So the Sloane plot is so fun, interesting, intense, and then at the end there are a few moments that totally just leak the air out of it. The first is she's having a conversation with Don about like the information's real, whatever. This is what he said, and then Don in the middle of it is like, is Maggie in love with Jim? And so it's like, I don't know. What do you?
I'm gonna get fired.
This is not my plot line.
But not only that, but like, okay,
is Maggie in love with Jim?
Is Maggie in love with Jim? Be honest. I don't tell me. No, it's not only that, but the fact that, first of all, Charlie comes up to her and says, "Hey, you should lie and say that you misunderstood the difference between 4 and 7, because they're only one syllable apart in Japanese." And she's like, "I don't misunderstand that. I'm very fluent.
Yeah, I speak fluent Japanese. Don't."
And then they keep relaying to her in sort of a kind of clever Sorkin-y way where they're like, "No, you don't understand Japanese." Mm-hmm. And it takes her like 6 or 7 tries to be like, "Oh wait, no, I do, but I have to say I don't." But that means that I have to lie on air and prove myself to be incompetent when I'm actually not. And then she turns to Will and is like, "Mr. Man, what do I do?" And he's like, "Say you're a liar." She's like, "Okay," and then she does it.
The nuts thing about the interaction is she turns to Will and she literally says, "Help me. I need wisdom." And Mackenzie's there and she says, "I have wisdom." And Sloane says, "No, Mac, you don't."
Oh no, she says your wisdom usually leads to and like makes explosion noises.
Right. That's literally the interaction that happens here.
That's real. We didn't make that up.
That's nuts.
It undoes everything.
Totally unravels the legitimacy of this plot. Not entirely. There's still so much of it that I appreciated and that I want to see happen going forward. I'm now pretty invested in Sloane as a character. Early on, I didn't expect that to happen.
Yeah.
But it's like, ugh. Really,
okay,
really
I think
punted on that one.
The only way that somebody could defend that plot is to say that this entire episode is actually about Will. But like, why? That doesn't work. That's not. No. I'm not gonna allow it.
This whole show's about Will.
Yeah. Well, then why are we watching it? If I don't like Will, then what? Everything else about it is good. It's like a show that tries to be about something, but all the side characters are better. Basically,
so then Sloane, we don't know what happens. I guess she does that.
I think that's the implication. And then Dr. Habib is like, anyways, you talked about a teacher. Who are you actually talking about? What's the other story that they mentioned in those mean comments? And he's like, well, and this is all, again, carried out in like 1 5-minute scene. They have a guy who's basically a spokesperson for Rick Santorum. Remember that name? Wow.
Yeah.
That was weird. It's like when I heard Michelle Bachmann and I was like, something like clicked in my brain about how mad I was or how good Tina Fey's impression was. This guy is a spokesperson, but he's also a gay black man, which Aaron Sorkin, like, I can just picture this fucking dude, like templing his fingers, like so proud that he got a character like this on a show. And he's like, ha, yes, the liberal dream, the gay black man. And he just, again, he becomes the rich Koch brothers petting a cat. And really all my villains are Giovanni from Pokemon or Dr. Claw.
Pretty much, yeah.
He's so happy to have this guy on here, and then Will basically gets to tell this guy, gets to white-splain Rick Santorum to this man and be like, hey, the guy you work for hates you. He wants you to not exist. He thinks you're less than human, less than man. And that's unconstitutional. Doesn't that make him a bad candidate? And the guy's like, what? Step the fuck back. Like, what do you... I love that this is the first time an interviewer, because this show, I've even skipped scenes where they talk about this, does the thing Sorkin always does, which is dunking on conservatives.
Yeah.
This is the first time where they kind of like really hard dunk back on this show.
I really liked it.
The guy's
I really liked this scene.
Basically, the guy takes it for a while, and there were rumors that he had cried during it. Like when we see later in the future, people are like, "That you made that guy cry." So you're expecting that to happen, but no. The guy tells him to stop talking, and then every time Will tries to talk, he cuts him off and says, "I will tell you when I'm finished speaking."
Yeah, that was really, really incredible.
Oh, Damon Gupta, the actor who plays that guy, incredible work.
And it's such. First of all, it's nice to see Will being an asshole, and the show totally recognizing that that's what's going on.
Yeah.
Recognizing that he's in the right, at least in my ideological opinion, to be pressing this guy. At first, I was on board with him asking these questions of, why do you support a candidate who believes XYZ? So ideologically, I'm on his side, but then you can see how this quest for truth and for being uncompromising can kind of break down the civility of the news, which is an important part of doing the news right, quote unquote, is having like respect and decorum being a part of what you're doing. So yeah, I don't know. It was complex. It was nuanced. It made me think and realize that my perspective was limited on this character. When he says, "I am not defined by my blackness. I'm not defined by my gayness."
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's the line, right?
I really had to step back and say, yeah, I had been approaching this character from that perspective. And maybe it's because he was set up as this kind of straw man at the very beginning of, hey, it's a gay black man. But it really made me self-assess, what are the moments in my life where I'm defining another person by one specific attribute? What are the moments when I'm teaching in a charter school in East Harlem and limiting my students to their color when I'm thinking about what information is valuable for them to know? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's something that I appreciated that the show went there, because I didn't think the show would ever do that with that much fidelity.
It's actually a really important point that I'm so impressed that they acknowledged, which is that oftentimes a lot of, I guess, liberal media and just like left-leaning media in general is about telling disadvantaged people that they deserve better as opposed to giving them the opportunities to do better. So instead of Will being like letting this guy speak and talk about his platform and explaining why he does in fact support Rick Santorum, despite the fact that a lot of Santorum's policies are like directly against his lifestyle, like that guy's allowed to have that point of view and allowed to like live his life and be a person, and define himself by his Catholicism as opposed to the color of his skin. That's what true equality actually is. It's, as opposed to being like, you're being oppressed and you don't even realize it, you dummy. Like that's such a relatable thing that I feel like I see in the news all the time.
Yeah.
And in the world, like on social media and stuff, is people telling others like, you deserve better, you're not being treated right, you should fix it. I'm not going to fix it for you, but you have to do it. You have to acknowledge that Rick Santorum is terrible, and like that's XYZ, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's really prescient. It's like it struck a chord with me and I was like, wow, yes. I want to. So that's sort of the peak of that, is that Will feels so bad about that as ultimately the reason why all of this stuff is the reason why he hasn't been sleeping.
Right.
And the episode ends there. But I want to real briefly ask you another question,
Okay.
just about Will McAvoy and about the show that we haven't really addressed this yet. So Will, most of the stuff that makes him on Newsnight successful is his ability to have on people and address them in ways that feels like he's challenging them but not talking down to them.
Sure.
And we see that power dynamic kind of shift here, where he's like, oh no, he's actually kind of talking down to them more than he thinks he is. Do you think there are like media personalities today doing what Will McAvoy is doing and doing it well? And where is that? Like, why don't we talk about people the way that it seems like everyone's talking about Will McAvoy, like celebrity news critique people that are actually,
I think there are plenty of TV journalists who are doing that sort of thing. I don't watch a ton of TV news, so it's sort of hard to answer that question. But I think people have clips here and there where they're taking that stance and doing that thing. There was a clip from CNN a couple days ago. What is the guy's name?
Don Lemon,
Yeah, is that who I'm thinking of?
the black guy from CNN.
Yeah.
Yes, Don Lemon.
Who came out and talked about Trump's comment about
shitholes.
yes.
Yes.
Shithole countries.
That was
yeah.
awesome. Yes, that's exactly yes.
So I think, and maybe in our current climate, there's more of an impetus to speak out and to have that sort of opinion. But I think the newsroom is I think in some cases it's misdirecting its reformist impulse, because I think that there are plenty of people on cable news who have the right idea about what they want to be doing. It's just the structure of cable news that sort of sucks any meaning out of it. Like, I think the people involved might be coming to it with the right head on their shoulders, or at least some are coming at it with a real journalistic integrity and impulse. Um, but the sheer volume of TV that they're producing, and the structure of having to have this guy from this guy side and this guy from that side, those are the things that bankrupt TV news and its credibility. And I guess, yeah, you could argue that there's some softness about keeping people honest to a certain set of facts. It's tough because I think that nobody's consistently the worst or consistently the best at any of these things.
Absolutely. Like all of the examples I have, just to name a couple, I mean, Jake Tapper does a lot of this stuff at CNN.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Anderson Cooper does a lot of this stuff also at CNN. Don Lemon does plenty of this stuff also at CNN. And then
Yeah.
this is the thing that we got a comment about this that I was going to include at some point from friend of the podcast, Frankie, who mentioned that it's really important to mention to point out at some point that a lot of the lines and the plot lines that they give to Will McAvoy in this show are like almost directly lifted from things that Rachel Maddow said and did at the same time that this show was taking place. And what it means and how it can be viewed as very problematic that Sorkin chose to take the words of a queer woman and put them in the mouth of a straight white guy. Because she's kind of doing the stuff that Will does, or she was a lot at the time.
Yeah.
In terms of like having people on and being like, no, actually, the thing you're saying is fucked up and bad. Why are you saying that? Like, let's challenge that in a meaningful way.
Yeah.
So basically, getting at like this is happening, but all the people that I mentioned have also made huge mistakes and said terrible things. So the news is complicated. So when I see Will like mess up and say these bad things on air, I'm like, well, I don't hate that he messes up. I just hate who he is outside of the news. I think the material he's given is actually really good, and I would watch his show, like for sure.
For sure, yeah.
And maybe someday, like watching more of the show, I'll be more inclined to watch the news more regularly, or at least like the stuff, like the interview stuff. Because it's less about what bothers me about the news, which is the sort of like fear mongering, the world is constantly on fire feeling. And it's more of like, here's something that's on all of our minds. Let's break it down and talk about it. And like that is what I want out of the news. That was a lot. Speaking of the news, we're going to talk about what happened in the news.
So we're looking at March 11th, 2011, because that is the day where the earthquake hits that sets off the tsunami in Japan and sets off the nuclear reactor issues at Fukushima. And there's not a ton else that is on the page here for this day. There's something about Mel Gibson being charged with battery against an ex-girlfriend of his, but now Mel Gibson is in Daddy's Home 2, so really, for some reason, we keep forgiving that guy. Look into your heart, America, and try to figure out why you keep giving that guy a pass for being literally one of the shittiest celebrities there is.
You talking about Mel Gibson?
Yeah.
Yeah, just a garbage person.
Just truly garbage. There is a piece in here about a federal magistrate in the U.S. ruling that prosecutors can demand Twitter account info.
Wow.
In relation to WikiLeaks. So, okay.
I care a lot about WikiLeaks, says Neil.
Now, today we don't have net neutrality anymore, so things have gotten a little, or priorities shifted a little bit internet-wise.
Just a skosh.
And that's pretty much what I found on the page here.
Yeah, some Blackwater stuff. Blackwater was a really big deal. Zimbabwe going through some political changes, and the Libyan civil war continues. The Arab Spring continues.
Yes.
And it will continue for a while. Yeah, I think that pretty much does it, Magellan.
Alan, would you like to hear what we are watching next week?
I really would. I sincerely would.
Okay. Next week, we are watching season 1, episodes 7 and 8. Episode 7 is entitled 1-May, so 1st of May. I don't know how to verbalize that, but
I think that's what it is.
1st of May. An anonymous source contacts Charlie and provides advanced details on an imminent story of national importance. When news breaks that the president will be making a televised speech that night, the 2.0 staff cuts short its anniversary party.
Magellan, do you remember what happened on 5/1/2011?
I think I looked it up by accident earlier,
okay.
so it's not that I remember, but I know what that episode's about.
Okay. We're talking Bin Laden, folks. It's going to be exciting.
Yeah. And then season 1, episode 8 is entitled The Blackout Part 1, Tragedy Porn. So we'll do the first part of the two-parter next week, and then we'll finish up the two-parter and the entire season the following week. Blackout Part 1, Tragedy Porn. Newsnight's refusal to lead with a pair of sensational stories causes ratings to plummet and forces Will and Mac to abandon their principles in order to lure back viewers and shore up the network's bid to land a Republican debate.
I like something about. All right, can we just say it? It's called the blackout because there's a blackout at the office.
I'm into it.
Yeah,
Unless there's a scene
Ooh.
where Maggie and Jim are accidentally stuck in a closet and it's a blackout and they make out with each other.
Okay,
Did I get it right?
let's just put a pin in that one and we'll talk about it.
Oh, I'm boiling inside.
I love it.
Holy moly.
I love it. Your pain brings me joy because
And,
it
like,
leads to more joy.
They both drop something and then their heads bump together or something like that.
And then they like a bunch of papers fall and he's like, I'm sorry. And she's like, I'm sorry, smooch.
Yeah.
Magellan,
Yeah, what's up?
let's plug some stuff.
Yeah. First, can I just say, sorry, last thing about the newsroom right now?
Please.
There's so much more talk about tabloids and ratings than I wanted in my news show.
It's important.
Well, yeah, but literally, I didn't.
I don't give a fuck.
Don't care. All right, let's talk about plugs. Alan, where can people find the show online?
Well, Magellan, if you want to email the show, you can go ahead and send those emails over to chatspod@gmail.com. That's CHATZPOD@gmail.com. We love receiving your emails. We feature them in a segment called the News Bag, which takes place between the episodes. You probably just heard it. You can also tweet at us. Tweet at chatspod, CHATZPOD over there. I love tweets. I love DMs. I love, you should just follow us there in general because that's when you'll find out when episodes go up. And please do us a favor if you have a chance, rate us on iTunes. Hopefully give us 5 stars. Let people know that you like the show because we love hearing about new listeners. We get emails every once in a while being like, I just discovered your show, and it warms the cockles of my heart.
Yeah.
The cockles. Cock.
The cockles.
God. Magellan, where can people find you on the internet?
They can find me on Twitter at JustAFluke. That's JUSTAPFLUKE. They can also find me on another program coming back this weekend, for real, entitled Adulthood, which is spelled ADULTHOOD. I think I've done that joke before.
Yes.
It is a podcast in which every episode I cover 15 seconds of the movie Boyhood, and I do something related to that and to my life, and that's the whole deal.
My life.
My life, my wife. Alan, where can people find your life?
People can find my life and my wife over at twitter.com/Alan Ibrahim. That's spelled ALLENIBRAHIM. And you can listen to me on another podcast. It's called Fireside Friends. It's a monthly pop culture discussion podcast. At the end of January, we're going to be discussing Doki Doki Literature Club. It's a video game. It's a visual novel. And we just recorded the first half of the show, and it's great.
Nice.
You can find that at firesidefriends.net. Thank you, dear listeners, so much for listening to this episode of the ChatzRoom. Good night.